I think equities markets around the world are irrational at the moment. I mean, completely irrational. I don't know how you can effectively hibernate economies and the equity markets continue to increase from some of their lows. It just doesn't make any sense at all. And what I think you're seeing is, an increasing mood for countries to start to look at domestic production, which might be a short-term sugar hit to their economies, but over the medium term is going to cause a lot of problems. And whenever you have economic nationalism, political nationalism, there's some pretty ugly and very unappealing outcomes from that. So I think, the great challenge moving forward is world leaders are going to have to keep talking. They're going to have to make unpopular decisions about keeping global trade on track. I don't think they're going to do that, and I think it's going to be a very different world coming out of the coronavirus era. No doubt about that.
Mr. Hockey, I wanted to ask you about that new world because you're there in Washington, D.C. I know you've met with the president previously and you have a relationship with him. It does seem like President Trump had such a winning political narrative on trade and the economy. And now it seems like both of those things are in total disarray as a result of the coronavirus. How do you see this changing the US political landscape? And with Trump struggling to reopen the economy now, what does that mean for his re-election prospects in November?
Well, Donald Trump's re-election, in my view, is contingent on how he handles the next few months. His narrative going to the November election will be, look, I had nothing to do with the economic downturn. In fact, I committed all the resources of America to try and address it. But if you really want a brighter future, if you want to get back to the economy we had, vote for me. And Joe Biden's narrative will be, I am the only person that can provide the sort of experienced leadership and the know-how to be able to handle these sorts of crises and get us all through. So I think what you're seeing is that the two narratives, now that Bernie Sanders has pulled out today, the two narratives are quite clear leading up to the November election. Having said all of that, much like equity markets, people will vote on the basis of hope or fear. And I can't tell you what America looks like as people go to the polls in November, whether they are looking for hope or whether they fear what might be around the corner. But both of those factors are going to play heavily in the election. I might add, this is not exclusive to the United States. One of the things I'm celebrating at the moment is the end of populism. I think you're seeing governments around the world being forced to make unpopular decisions. Closing their economies is actually really unpopular. Forcing people to hibernate is unpopular. But they're the right decisions. And I think we are at a totemic moment in world politics, reflected in the fact that all of a sudden leaders have to make unpopular decisions rather than popular decisions. And hopefully that'll be good for the future.
So what do you think this new world order is going to look like? You have Henry Kissinger talking about a new epoch post-coronavirus. Australia's really caught in the crosshairs here. You have our number one trading partner with China and our number one strategic ally in the United States really in a logjam here. Do you think that that new world order is going to mean a resurgent China, which is really going to provide perhaps a bigger challenge to the United States when it comes to the economy and the military as well? How do you see the dust settling on the virus and that new world order emerging, if you will?
Well, there's two things. The first is we've never had a twin peak crisis like this. We've never had a health crisis and an economic crisis at exactly the same time, one causing the other. That's never happened before. The second thing to bear in mind is that this is the first really significant economic downturn in the United States, certainly not in Asia, but in the United States and many other countries, where the financial system hasn't caused, some crack in the financial system hasn't caused the major economic downturn. Take that into account. I think the other interesting factor is there is no doubt in my mind that there is a growing divide between China and the United States. As one very senior White House official said to me the other day, we in America demand that our soldiers wear uniforms made in America, but if they're injured, they end up getting antibiotics that are made in China. And that's not going to be sustainable into the future. So I think you're going to see a nationalisation of supply lines in health. You've seen it in telecommunications with the whole 5G argument, obviously in defence, in infrastructure, probably in capital markets as well, and a range of other areas. Finally, I'd just say this. This isn't a problem just for Australia. It's a problem for Singapore. It's a problem for Japan. It's a challenge for Malaysia and Indonesia and everyone else in the Asian region who has a very deep trading relationship with China, but also a very deep security relationship with the United States.
Right.
So to think that this is just a challenge for Australia is very short-sighted. It's a challenge for all of Asia.